as long as they pay, they have someone to focus on, even though it's a parasocial virtual thing. But many people are really already satisfied with it and then don't really have a meaning in real life relationship. One of my clients recently got this rejection. He tried to ask for her number, but what she said was, "Oh, you're too attractive. I can't. I can't. Why people on the streets always say the same thing, like, oh, cheating is totally fine. My husband going prostitution. No, no, that doesn't count as cheating. Where they come from?"
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Dating Beyond Borders podcast. There are a few countries around the world that I'm genuinely dying to visit and haven't yet. And one of them is Japan. And it's not just me. The world seems to be obsessed with Japanese culture. Just look on YouTube. And it makes sense. There is really no country like it. Today, I'm genuinely and ridiculously excited to welcome Asagi, who is a Japanese dating advisor and content creator, to dive into the Japanese dating scene. Welcome, Asagi.
Hi, Marina-san. Thank you for inviting.
I love this, a very Japanese introduction.
Very.
Thank you, Asagi-san. Very happy to have you on this podcast. I've been trying to get a Japanese dating advisor, a female one, to come on the show for quite some time. I had Yuta from That Japanese Man Yuta a while back, and he's a friend of mine, so it was nice to chat to him. But you specifically focus on the dating scene, which is like a gold mine for me because I have a lot of questions for you today. I'm really, really fascinated to find out more than we get to find out through YouTube videos, street interviews, and all that kind of stuff that goes viral typically.
Okay.
So let's start. I'm going to start a little bit negative here, but
All right.
I've done a lot of research into the loneliness, the loneliest countries around the world. I recently did a video about Sweden being the loneliest, and I got a lot of comments under the video saying, what about Japan? Japan is also, top of the list for being the loneliest country. So any thoughts on that?
Did you say any kind of statistics or some sort of data or?
So typically they kind of, whichever statistics I take a look at, it's kind of interchangeably either Sweden or Japan. So it's one of the two. And I've done a lot in Sweden, but I haven't really talked a lot about Japan.
Yeah, because when we see this kind of statistics or information about Japan in general, we also should look at the demographics of Japan, right? We are aging society, and that kind of statistics and information tend to reflect older generations' point of view. And I also see and hear a lot about older people's loneliness issue. Like, they are working for a company, so dedicate to the job, working long hours for like 30 years in their lives for one company. That was more like a normal thing for older generation. And then in Japan, you have to retire between 60 to 65. So you just have to leave from the company you worked for like over 30 years. And then it's going to be really hard for them to find another community and fit in the new environment and become very lonely. I think there's that. Also, I also think that this is for in general, not just older people, but for also young people. It's more of Tokyo thing, sounds like.
I've heard that.
Usually people in countryside, they tend to, look after each other and, checking in people, make sure everyone is involving to the community kind of stuff. But in Tokyo, we are, really isolated. Like each household and people, communities are kind of here and there, and then it's kind of hard to make new friends in Tokyo because everyone is not from Tokyo, basically. So I think those kind of aspects are contributing to loneliness in Japan.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you mentioned the job, first of all, because from what I know, Japanese people are really hard workers, and it's very important to dedicate as much time as possible to your job, to even go drinking with your colleagues after work, and
Mm.
like I think it's that pressure as well, right? Like people deal with a lot of pressure to be the best they can be.
Yeah, yeah. I also worked for a Japanese company for about 7 years, and yeah, that was a lot of commitment, to be honest.
How many hours a day did you work typically, or how many hours a week?
In my case, it was not too bad, I guess. I had some times that I had to stay up really late, like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., some sort, but it's not like all the time. So, um, and the company was pretty big, and nowadays those companies are making sure it's not like illegal or anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that really distinguishes Japan. Well, also Japan, but just East
Mm,
Asia in general is just working crazy hours. But also, you mentioned as well that like people are quite isolated in Tokyo, maybe not so much in other cities. I've definitely heard that Tokyo is its own like thing. People are a lot
mm,
more isolated, and I think in general, people struggle a lot. Oftentimes, expats with making friends because
mm,
Japan has kind of the notoriety of being super polite and very people like people kind of live in like rule based culture, like you really are very sweet and very polite, but in general, like to connect, a lot of people really struggle. So in your opinion, do you think it's difficult to make friends in Japan?
yeah, I really think so. I don't know.
Why
I
is
think,
that?
right? I think it's Japan is very community based. Um, and community by saying community, it's usually school community or workplace community. And if you don't fit in those community, you're gonna have a hard time having friends. Um, and especially in Tokyo, if you try to make friends outside your work or school, it's quite hard. You can't just encounter people, chat up to them, and make friends with them. It's hard to happen. People are very cautious to each other.
So you mentioned community, right? Like it's very like
Mm,
it's like very much about the harmony of the community. Like Japan
yeah.
is very much. So they did this really interesting study that I talked about when I did my video on like Western and Eastern, like East Asian cultures. So they showed this tank with fish to American kids, and they asked them to show what was in the tank to talk about what they saw, and the American kids focused on the biggest fish. They were like, "Oh, look at this fish. This is the biggest one." And they just talked about that one fish. And then they did the same with Japanese kids. I think it was Japanese and maybe
Mhm.
another culture like Chinese. And the Japanese and the Chinese kids, they focused on like the seaweed and the rocks and the fish and the little fish. So it's like the whole thing, like about, so it's kind of
Oh,
fitting into the mold, right? It's like trying to
right.
be like everyone else in a way as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of like unconsciously what we do. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So when a foreigner comes to Japan, are there any like tips or tricks or anything to know about Japanese people if they want to make this process a little bit easier to at least make some friends?
I get asked that a lot from my viewers too, but I always say that um, join the community, some kind of community, and have something in common with them. You can't, I mean, you can technically, but it's gonna be hard for you to just chat up random people on the street or I don't know, cafe, library, that kind of places, and then let their guard down. People are just very guarded. It's probably hard for you to do so in Japan, especially in Tokyo. And But if you are in in a community and you have something in common, it's a lot easier for you to, fit in the community and make friends inside the community. Yeah.
And Japanese communication is quite different, isn't it, from Western? Because I know some of my friends, they lived in Japan, and they are female, and Japanese men have told them that they're too direct, or they're too like forward, they're too aggressive, because I
Oh.
feel like that's a bit of a taboo, right, in Japanese culture, is that being, because I think, well, this is from my perspective, and I would love to hear what you think about it. It's like it's quite an indirect culture. Like you don't really say what you mean a lot.
Mm, yes, we do a lot. なんだろう、a lot of Japanese expression and phrases are not very direct. So, yeah, there's that. And also, especially when it comes to confrontation or disagreement, something negative. When it comes to that, people are really indirect. And you always have to be like, have to make sure the person is not feeling comfortable or things like that. And it's quite even hard for me as a Japanese local.
Why so? Do you think it's because that there's like a sense of harmony that they want to preserve,
Mm,
like not to make someone else feel uncomfortable?
yeah, definitely the harmony. Yeah, want to keep the harmony, want to keep the relationship, friendship. So we tend to just be soft about those negative things, and then a lot of things kind of be up in the air, and you have to just pick up from the air.
So you are married to an American, am I correct? Is he
Yes,
American?
yes, yeah,
Has
Florida.
Florida,
Mm.
has that changed that part of you being like more direct?
I mean, definitely marrying to him. I'm always trying to be like clear about my intention and discussion, have more discussion. But to be honest, my husband is here for a while, like 9 years. And he was in relationships with Japanese women in the past too. So we actually don't have so much conflict when it comes to cultural gaps because we both know what to expect and how to make compromise around the cultural gap. So we don't have so much difficulties in those things, but definitely my past relationships with Westerners, it was a little struggle, because I mean, not just relationships, but also friendships, right? People sometimes can be very uh, direct and, saying things like, oh, you are so wrong. This shouldn't be it. Like, oh, okay. ちょっと a little bit intimidating. Mm.
It's interesting that you mentioned that you've dated other Westerners. Is there like, I feel like, and I don't know if this is a trend, I don't want to go as far as to say that, but a lot of Japanese women do date foreign men, but I don't see vice versa. I don't see a lot of Japanese men dating foreign women.
Compared to Japanese men dating foreigners, I think it's a lot more common for Japanese women dating foreigners, I guess. But uh, but to be honest, when it comes to dating Westerners, right? It's more common for women in Japan. But when it comes to dating foreigners in general, uh, Asians too, it's a lot common for men too. Um, yeah, the past decade. the most common marriage in Japan is Japanese men and Korean women or Chinese women.
Hmm.
So I think it's a lot common, but you can't really see because they are both Asian.
And also East Asian. I mean, the culture is different, of course, like especially
Mm,
Japan to China, but
yeah,
still Asian, right? But
yeah.
I feel like with Japanese women, correct me if I'm wrong, it's more like Japanese women and white guys a lot of times, which is
Uh,
why, or maybe you have an influx of white guys going to Japan and looking for women there. Maybe that's why.
there are also that, I guess. I mean, compared to, if we see the demographics, right? Um, when it comes to Westerners, there are so many like Caucasian compared to, I guess, Black people. So you might see a little more couples who are Japanese women and white, like looking men. But I have some statistics like, there are so many American people getting married to Japanese people, but I don't know how much percentage is white people. So it's kind of hard to say from me, but I think in general, Japanese women tend to be in a relationship or marriage with Asian foreigners. Um, Nowadays, especially nowadays, Korean men are very popular because of K-pop and
Yes.
those culture.
Do you feel like there are some stereotypes that you get as a Japanese woman? I mean, you have like maybe Westerners coming to Japan and just assuming Japanese women are a certain way. What about it is a bit annoying or just you don't think is necessarily true?
I think there are a lot of people who have a very unrealistic image in Japanese women because they don't really have experience to talk Japanese women in real life, and then their information is all from like anime or uh, more like a sex industry people, like porn stars. Those kind of contents are very popular, even outside Japan. So they have that kind of image in Japanese women, and yeah, I feel like that's a little bit unrealistic.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a lot of well, I don't know if these guys are flocking to Japan, but the passport bros that are
Oh, passport
unsatisfied with
plus.
unsatisfied with dating in the US mostly. But in
Mm,
other parts around the world, and then they just look for countries where women are typically like they seem more submissive and more agreeable, and they come to these countries because they also feel like even if they're just an average Joe, they get a lot more attention because they're let's say blonde or blue eyed, and I've noticed this in Latin America. I've noticed a
mm,
lot of, I was just in Mexico and I saw a lot of couples with your average, like Joe McJohnson would never get a date in the US. And that is mean to say. I mean, because it's not like he doesn't deserve a date, but it would be very hard for him too. But with a very beautiful, let's say, Mexican woman, just because there's a bit of this fascination with that with the blonde hair, and that was really interesting to see, and that got me thinking about obviously all the guys going to Japan and Korea. I think Korea, as you said, like Korea is a bit different because Korean men are I'd say as popular as Korean women.
yeah.
And absolutely, like the world is just obsessed with them. There's so much around Korean men nowadays.
Right?
I had a friend, she's Russian, married to a Latin American man, calls me up and she's like, I'm obsessed with Korean men. I'm like, you live in Panama, girl. Where did you find Korean men?
Yeah, everyone loves K-pop idols. Yeah, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
And I've had a lot of girlfriends that have, taught English in Japan or Korea back in the day. And they were really miserable because they said nobody looked at us because they're all like going after non-Caucasian girls because that's why they arrived. So I was wondering if there was still that like romance tourism happening in Japan. But you're saying it's not so much a thing anymore. It doesn't look like.
Mm, I don't feel that way. I mean, when it comes to more like one night one night deal or like a very なんだろう just them being adventurous kind of things.
Mm,
Maybe that kind of like exotic feature can be advantage. But when it comes to like serious relationship, more meaningful relationships, I don't think there's no such thing like you can't get dates in your country at all, and then all of a sudden you can get dates in Japan just because you are not Japanese. I think it's hardly happen because it's in the end Japanese women are women human too. And if you are an asshole, they don't want to date you in general because that's what
yeah.
I would say. But yeah,
Mm.
but I I also would say um like I probably am like that too. It's not like I can't get dates in Japan at all, but I don't think Japanese men in general, compared to Westerners and Japanese men, I think I have more advantage in dating with foreigners. Um, it's just I'm interested in more Western culture, and I might be a little more upfront and a little bit different from average Japanese women, and then Japanese men can dislike the things about me. So if I can get better dates with foreigners, why I should probably take advantage of that. And then I can say that for those men too. If you can be more like if you can stand out in Japan, use that advantage.
So, so that's interesting that you say that, like, maybe you're a bit too upfront for a Japanese man. Is that a thing that, do you find that Japanese men typically go for the more soft and agreeable women in general?
I would say so. Yeah. In Japan, we have this saying, 男を立てる in Japanese, but it means like put husbands first, right? So we always have to kind of like supportive, uh, and even though we are even more talented than those husbands, we have to be like very humble and make it look like husband is the is supporting this household kind of things, you know. But um, maybe I am more like if it's my credit, I would say that's my credit. So maybe Japanese men don't really like that kind of aspect.
And that's why I feel, well, and that's why I believe maybe you do relate better to Western guys, because that's more of a, if you do something well, then you own it, right? That's more of a
Mm,
Western quality as well.
yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Do you find that that has changed, that fact that put your husband first? Because I feel like a lot of Japanese women are, I mean, most women work nowadays. I don't know the percentage. I can't look it up, but
Mm.
I've seen statistics on it. Like there's a huge percentage of women in the workforce in Japan right now. Do you feel like women are now like rejecting like getting married and having kids? Do you see a lot of that when you do your research, when you talk to people?
Mm. Uh, marriage. Less people are interested in marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. そうね. It goes both women and men and women, but women in specifically, I think many people find it hard to get married and have uh family because of how the society treats women. Like most of the time, if you get married and have kids, women still take care of the children mainly, and a husband goes to work. Um, and women kind of have to sacrifice their career while the children are still little, so they're gonna be a lot behind. That's the image. You can't make both work, childcare and career. So you know women nowadays want to be more independent, right? Especially financially independent. So it's it's very important for them to have their career, and you know those who care more about careers, less interested in marriage and kids. That kind of tendency is definitely still there, I think.
Yeah, from what I heard, marriage was a huge goal for Japanese people back in the day.
Mm,
Um, it's not as much anymore. It seems like people are opting out. I mean, around the world, it's not a Japanese
right.
thing. I mean, it's happening in Italy. It's happening in Greece. Like
Mm,
that's more fascinating to me. I'm not as surprised by the fact that Japanese people are not wanting to get married as much. When I hear about Azerbaijan not wanting to marry, that's kind of weird because
oh,
their culture is so much around. It's so conservative as well.
right.
But what's really interesting is like when I was looking at the studies, it shows that nearly half, 46% of young Japanese men have never had a girlfriend, sorry.
Mm,
And 48% of them answered, I don't think I will be lonely even if I continue living alone. So this is something, it wasn't so surprising because I've heard of this for, I mean, at least 10 years. I think that this trend was happening, right? There's a term like carnivore and omnivore, right? Like men that never want
uh,
to have a girlfriend.
mm,
They just prefer to play like video games and, go to work and have their single guy life. But why do you think that is? Why like so many Japanese men are choosing not to have a girlfriend?
うん。まあね、especially men, it's more obvious, but also happening to women too, I think. And but there are a lot of factors, like it's more like a global issue that it's marriage is not a cultural social expectation anymore, and you can have a life without getting married. So I mean, there are those kind of general issues in Japan too. But when it comes to Japan, I think the unique reason is um, the parasocial relationship. We have so many content like Japanese idols, anime characters, uh, VTubers, and stuff like that. People are really into it, and you know support them, pay money, and going to their concerts, meet and greet, and they can get like a butterfly, a little bit, satisfaction from them. And once they know that, as long as they pay and they have someone to focus on, even though it's a parasocial virtual thing, but um, many people are really like already satisfied with it and then don't really have a meaning in real life relationship because it can be painful, right? Sometimes you get rejected even though you put so much effort on it, emotionally tiring, and people don't really want to get through all that. um, and even if you don't date or get married to it, anyone, you still get some sort of satisfaction. Prostitution as well. Even when you are not satisfied, like physically, you can get satisfied as long as you pay. So those kind of like contents are everywhere in Japan, and then that kind of makes them discouraged to have real life relationship, I think.
What you mean by parasocial? Do you mean like virtual reality type of stuff?
Um, I think both. Like the なんだろうな。
So one is
Anything can be
services, right? Like one is services that you can go in and you can pay money, you can rent a girlfriend, you can rent a boyfriend,
right,
like
right,
that's
right.
one, right? And
Mm.
then the other is the virtual, like virtual girlfriend and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah. まあ、あとはアイドルとか。
So is it easier, do you think, like for people, it's just easier to, or men, it's easier for them to pay money and to know that there's nothing that is going to go wrong. My feelings are not going to get hurt. I'm not going to get rejected. And to play make believe and say, like, okay, I got my fix. I got a feeling of being with a girl, of having
うん。
my ears cleaned.
Yeah, yeah, weird, but yeah.
Of having my non-sexual hour
Mm,
in a room, and like, or a sexual, because you talked about prostitution and I want to get into that as well, but like,
mm,
what really interests me is not even the prostitution so much in Japan, because prostitution, you get that around the world, but it's more the non-sexual stuff that people go in for. Like, I don't know any other place around the world where people will go in to get their ears cleaned and just to lie on someone's lap and tell them about their life. And, for me, that's very interesting. And that, for me, makes me feel that there's something missing. I mean, really missing, and that sense of like connection to another person. Because um, it's like, if I listened to a podcast literally just before we did this,
mm,
and they said that, nowadays in most of the world, you don't have to leave your room to fully be taken care of. Like, you can get your food delivered, you have your Netflix, you feel like you're connected, you have your food, you have everything. But so people don't rely on each other anymore,
mm.
but the only part of the body that's not satisfied with that is the brain, because in order
Oh,
to be like happy, you need to have connection. And that's why a lot of, or that's part of the reason people are struggling with mental health, is like they
mm,
don't have any friends. Like, studies show that people have like zero friends, most young people. And that's not Japan. I feel like we're going that way, where Japan is like always ahead of us, in the
right.
sense that, the dolls and all this, like, that you guys live in the future, I feel like, but we're going the same way. It's happening here as well. So I find that super interesting for me, because it's like a risk averse way of getting your needs met, but non-sexual needs, just that connection
Mm,
need,
mm,
without actually going out and saying, okay, I'm going to try to actually find a girlfriend or find a
mm,
partner, because that's
mm,
scary.
right. Yeah, I think that's the trend in many countries, I guess. But in Japan, yes. And but actually, those people who have been thinking like, yeah, I have all these contents to put into, so I don't need a girlfriend or anyone, and I can be totally fine without having without getting married. And then when they become middle age, like I don't know, 45 or something, all of a sudden they start to feel lonely because they haven't tried any like a real life connection. And even though they have all this, I don't know, ear cleaned or um
That's the most
like
important thing in the world.
hostess, hostess, all those like paid relationships, they feel kind of like meaningless at some point. And and then all of a sudden they start to sign up for dating apps and marriage matchmaking services. It's big in Japan,
Oh,
and get struggle because they don't have any practices while they were young. So actually, there's this new small trend coming in um, among Gen Z in Japan. They are looking at those middle-aged men and women struggling to get married, right? So they, those smart ones in Gen Z, they learn that, oh, I guess I should get married while I'm young, and then they start doing a matchmaking services and stuff like that in the early 20s. So it's not a trend right now, but it might be, coming back to the idea that you should have real relationships too. That's what I feel.
Yeah, I feel like there's no getting away from it. And I feel like with Gen Z, they actually polled them and they said, what kind of videos, what kind of movies do you guys want to see? And they said, we don't want to see sex. We want to see friendship and romantic love. And actually,
Mm,
friendship mostly, which was really
mm,
interesting, because if you ask millennials, I'm a millennial. Um, it wasn't, we weren't into friendship. Like that wasn't something, like if you want to watch a movie, you want to watch something, risque, or it was more
right.
that. But now if you make content around sex, people don't care as much. I've noticed that as well.
Mm,
My channel wasn't doing well, and I was like, I'll make a video that's a little bit more, this is the most sexually open, country or city in the world. And nobody cared because there's just
oh,
an oversaturation of sex.
right. Yeah, it's
You know,
everywhere.
it's everywhere. People are like, if you grow up with porn and your kid watching porn, like, what joy are you going to get out of watching another sex scene? Like in my generation, when we grew up, we didn't have any of this. So people
Right.
found out about sex from like looking at some magazine, finding a magazine under the parents' bed or something like this. It was like, wow. But it was exciting because nothing was shown. And now it's like any idiot can watch click
Right.
a like any literally a variety of things. But
True.
anyways, going back to Japanese men. But that's interesting that you mentioned that, like, they don't have the practice, but then they still at some point they want to get matched up with someone and get married. So that's
Yeah.
very interesting. So I feel like maybe it does come down to the fear of rejection, or like lack of practice with talking to women.
うん。そうだね。Because I even have female friends who are like so into parasocial relationships and can't really go out with actual men. So they seem like they're enjoying just having parasocial relationships, but at some point, I wonder how they are gonna be because they don't go out anymore.
Asagi, walk me through this parasocial relationship thing because it's something that I've never heard about before.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering how I can explain actually last night thinking about it. Because we just call them oshikatsu. Oshikatsu means the activity that uh, you support your favorite person, whether it's virtual or anime, anything, and yeah.
And then you have a relationship with this anime character, for example.
Yeah, yeah. You heard that? I think that was the news everywhere. There is a man, Japanese man, who got married to Hatsune Miku,
Yeah.
the virtual character, right? That kind of things. That's what I'm talking about.
Literally,
Parasocial.
as you were talking, I kept on thinking about this man.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
right.
I need to talk about this
He's
man.
famous. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it was such a, I remember someone did an interview with him and they asked him like, "Oh, are you happy?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm very happy." He said, because like I think he had some trouble. Like he was very a bit of a like a kind of a geeky guy who was picked like he was bullied a lot. And I always wonder, like, when people get into a relationship with anime or whatever, dolls, or if they
Mm.
truly believe that this is real. You said your friend is doing that as well.
Yeah, not as much as those Hatsune Miku guy, but yeah, at certain, yeah, there are so many levels of the relation. They just casually enjoy like supporting their favorite YouTuber or like a person, and then they also have real life relationship. But there are some people who are just so into those uh, people, like they want to support, and then spending all the money they made and kind of give up on the real life dating or relationships. So
Maybe I should go to Japan and make money. Someone can support my channel.
Yeah. You can do that. You can do that.
One of the things that I talk about, and yeah, I would love to hear others from you, is, and it really
Mm.
got to me. I watched this Vice documentary, and it was about this guy who didn't have any friends. So he hired this group of actors to pretend that they're his friends. But what
Oh.
got me wasn't just that he wanted to feel like he had friends, is that like they took photos, and it almost like he wanted to prove to others that he was really enjoying himself. And this group of actors didn't even bother to bring him real cake. They brought him fake fruit, which was a ripoff because he paid him a lot of money. And
Right.
it's this whole video about this guy enjoying his birthday with people he's never met because he was so alone. But that was one of the things that kind of just stuck with me because it was, yeah, it was quite heartbreaking, to be very honest. And, of course, you
Mm.
have the virtual dolls and AI, and now they're making this crazy new AI that's going to be your girlfriend, right?
Mm. Yeah, scary.
It is, yeah.
Mm.
And I feel like we're going that way very fast as well. Like I feel like they're going to introduce these AI girlfriends in the Western world where men never have to feel like they have to try again. They can just be cozy in their like AI world with this girl who's just
Mm.
perfect. And
Yeah.
everything else is going to be terrible in comparison.
Yeah. I worry about that, to be honest.
Mm,
Yeah, because I mean, I struggled a lot to, uh, you know, become where I am. Getting married and have family. But I think it was totally worth it. I learned so much from those experiences and improved myself through the heartbreaks and all the struggles I've been through. But without that, I wonder what it's like. What would have been. Um, and yeah, am I just too traditional, too old-fashioned, thinking that way? Like people should suffer. I
yeah,
don't know.
I agree with you. I think people get so comfortable, and the more comfortable you get, the more you want to be comfortable, and the harder it is for you to deal with any problems or to like get out of that bubble. And then it's more and more and more and more to the point where like you can't deal with the real world anymore, and then that's
Mm,
a really scary place to be. But
yeah,
you said that people do actually use marriage agencies to get married in Japan.
yeah, it's quite common. Mm,
Why is that? Because you have mentioned like people are not as excited to get married anymore, like the trend is going down, but
mm.
also people do use agencies.
Yeah, I think I saw the survey, Gen Z survey, kana? They're basically not interested in like dating and those stuff anymore. But when they do, it's for marriage. They don't want to just do those casual things or like risky relationships. So they don't want to deal with so much drama. Just for the real meaningful relationship that leads to marriage. So if you go to marriage agency, they have people who want to get married. So it's a lot easier and time efficient. That's what Japanese younger generation care about, time efficiency. Ne?
My God.
So yeah, because in real life relationships, it takes average in Japan. It takes 5 years to get married. Compared to that, marriage matchmaking, it's mostly within a year you can get married. So the cycle is a lot shorter and it's very time efficient. So when they want to get married, they go to that kind of services. It's becoming common. It's not a mainstream at this point, but especially after COVID, it's becoming more and more common, and young people are uh, noticing that is very, you know, uh, easy or like time efficient to go there and get married.
So I was told as well with online dating that one of the things that people put on their description is how much money they make, and
Japanese app, yeah.
also that they like, I think it was something about marriage or something like very thorough. That, yeah, tell me about
Mm.
that.
Yeah, I teach how to make dating profile to men, right? And they don't really put their like job information or anything, but I recommend to put it out there because Japanese women are looking at legitimacy. You know, if you are a jobless guy, um, not looking for anything but just fun, it's not really attractive for Japanese women because you know should what do they expect from those men? It's not time efficient at all. So yeah, definitely it's important to show the your job, stability of your status, but also when it comes to income, right? I mean, I find it strange too. But yeah, it shows your legitimacy, and like I told you, people are very cautious around each other, especially when it comes to strangers online. It's hard to tell if the person is legit, and maybe that showing the income shows the legitimacy, and then make it easier to let their guard down, and then he's a legit guy, maybe I can meet him, kind of thoughts coming up. So yeah, I think that's why Japanese dating app recommend to put your income.
What's very interesting to me is that you'd also mentioned on your social media that Japanese women also tend to hide their faces online sometimes. So I
Right.
wanna I wanna hear more about that.
Mm, yeah. I also find it ridiculous, but I mean there can be many reasons. Like although dating app is becoming common to use, there are still people who feel like a little bit embarrassing to uh, be found out that you are using dating app. So they hide faces. So like your neighbor don't notice. Um, yeah, because especially when you are in a small town, the cars you see on the dating app is very limited, and then your neighbors can easily find you if you are showing your full face. So that might be the reason. Or there are some people who feel like, if you are a woman, to be honest, you get so many likes, right? And then if they are putting their faces out there, they get too many likes, and then it's intimidating. So they're like, this is too much. I'll just hide my face and then minimize my likes. Uh, yeah,
Interesting. And do
yeah,
they just show like the back of their head, or what do they do?
yeah, back of their head, or masked face and things like that. At least I think for them, they are still try to show their vibes. Not completely faceless. And you know, uh, so men cannot judge from their appearance.
But in general, there is a big trend with meeting online, right? Because the stats that I found said that so up until 2015, 72% of married couples met through friends, work, family, or school. And apparently, there's still a preference to meet in real life.
Mm-mm. So yeah, before COVID, to be honest, dating app was not a thing. Uh, People felt really skeptical and didn't touch those online dating. But because of COVID, people kind of didn't have a choice um, to use dating up because you couldn't go out from the house. So with the COVID, dating up uh, rapidly became common, and most recent statistics actually say that it's the one of the most common way to meet their spouse. I think the most reliable statistic says that it's the second biggest thing, following workplace. Number one is workplace, and second was dating up. So it's becoming very common, to be honest, after COVID.
Yeah, I think it's the same. Well, it's definitely the same in the Western world. Like ever since COVID has hit, everyone just kind of got online. And what
Mm,
it's made, at least for us, is like an oversaturation of people and people
mm,
flaking a lot more. Like, I feel like online dating has gotten so bad because everyone is on it. You have a lot more choice. And so people like don't take each other seriously, and everyone's just struggling with online dating now. And yeah, that was since COVID has happened, right? Everybody had to get online and they stayed there.
mm.
So, um, I mean, but it's interesting that you say that in Japan, people still like number one places to meet is still work. I guess because you spend so much time at work, you probably that's the easiest. You can combine two things. You don't
Yeah,
have to like make space for social life.
yeah, yeah. Many things in your life happens in your workplace. That's the Japanese thing, I guess.
Isn't there a word like for I think there's a word for this is quite negative going off from dating, but um dying from being tired because of work? I think there's a Japanese word that's like it says it.
Working too much.
Yes, yes,
Work
but
work ですかな? That's
yes,
過労死, 過労死.
yes, yes. I knew it
Mm,
was something with a K, but yeah, that's such a when I like look at countries and like I come across this is a very like Japanese word because I
mm.
don't think I've heard of anything like that anywhere else, which makes me really think that people, yeah, they put their life on the line for work. And yeah, that's a bit of a sad topic there. So let's go get back onto the dating.
Okay. All right. Fun
We
topic.
go from dating to like death.
Oh no.
It's that kind of podcast. um, but you mentioned something called, okay, I'm gonna butcher it. Tatemae, tatamae.
建前、建前。
Okay, I was close. What is that?
建前ね。It's our communication culture. Um, yeah, it's our communication style, and we kind of tend to hide our true feelings, and say something like nice things, to usually to avoid conflict or confrontation, and yeah,
And
so
how does
that's
that
what.
relate to dating? Is it something that like people should be on guard for when they're starting to date someone?
Right, right. Yeah, I think tatemae comes up really frequently. Of course, in dating too. Like, one of my clients recently got this rejection from a woman, Japanese woman, right? He met her in a bar, and they chat, and he tried to ask for her number, but what she said was, "Oh, you are too attractive. I can't, I can't uh give you a number. You are too attractive." And he was like, "What does that mean, actually?" That made him question mark, and then asked me what it was. But yeah, man, that's a tatemae. Yeah, it's either, I don't know, she just didn't want to exchange number, or just felt like he's a playboy and she wanted to stay away from that kind of people. But either way, that was her way to say no. She doesn't really say no, I'm not interested in you, but instead she said, "You are too attractive, no, no, no." So I think that was a really obvious tatemae, obvious とか fun tatemae, I guess.
That's super
Sometimes it's
funny.
hard. Yeah.
That's super funny. I guess it's like our equivalent of I have a boyfriend, even if you don't have a boyfriend. You'll say
Oh,
like, because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So I usually just say I have a boyfriend,
oh,
and then that makes it a little bit
interesting.
easier. But I would never say to someone, "You're too attractive. I can't give you my number." Like,
Right. I thought it was funny too, but yeah. I think in a certain extent, I guess Westerners do that too. I
I
guess
think
it's
so. I think if you don't want to
yeah.
hurt someone's feelings, right? Like you
Mm,
ghost or you say something that's not exactly true.
mm,
But of course, it's interesting for me talking to you because Japan is like the one of the most indirect countries, and like you have countries that are super direct, like Germans or Dutch. They're like, and so I wonder what would happen if a German got into like a relationship with a Japanese, and just the
mm,
communication that would happen because like directness is on a scale. You have Americans that are like, compared to Japanese, they're very direct, but compared to Germans, they're not direct at all. But
right.
like Japanese, they're on that like last, they're like at the very end of indirectness. So I like that this word it kind of like describes the Japanese communication. And
Yeah.
I've heard as well, like if a man go out with Japanese women, a lot of times they have to kind of read body language because you're not going to be, it's not going to be very obvious what she wants, or like she kind of wants you to read her mind. Do you think that's true?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Reading mind, each other's mind happens a lot in Japanese communication, which I struggle to to read their minds. You really have to pay attention to what they say, what they, uh, you know, the body language and stuff like that. And then I feel like it's just practice.
Do you feel like men are as well? Do they do this tatemae thing as
Yeah,
well, or is it more women? Do you find?
both. Yeah, it goes both. Because when I was in a relationship with a Japanese men actually, they both said that uh you know, uh, Asagi, you should perceive more of what I want you to do. And then I was like, but you didn't say that. And then they were expecting me to kind of read their mind and then, you know, make it smooth. But I didn't really get that. Obviously, I was really bad at picking up those hints. So,
Yeah, that's very interesting because usually, like in the Western culture, it's usually the woman that says, like, I
yeah.
thought you would know what I meant. And the man is like, why didn't you tell me? But it's for me, it's funny that you say that, like, it was the guy that actually said that to you. And you're like, why
Yeah.
didn't you tell me outright?
I guess it's more of a women thing in Japan too, but men do that too, actually.
So I wanted to talk to you about something that has become kind of a talk of the town, which is that there are some street interview videos done by some creators where Japanese were interviewed and they said that, how do they feel about cheating? And most were okay with it, especially I think if it was with a prostitute, right?
Or prostitute.
Yeah. So you had a reaction about that in your videos. Um and I wanted to hear it from you because you didn't fully agree with that. You kind of said that like, well,
Right.
no, it's more that like street interview, like those guys pick out the most viral content, the most controversial content. And I could
They
agree
do.
with that because I make a lot of those videos. And of course you're gonna get someone who's gonna like get people talking, right? Because that's
Mm,
what sells the video. And then
right.
drop the other ones that are a bit more polite, neutral, um, that are not going to spark the conversation. So, what do you think about the subject of cheating in Japan?
Mm. Thanks for asking because I've been thinking about it too. Like, are we really how they show in the street interviews? Are we really? I'm certainly not, but why? Why people on the streets always say the same thing like, oh, cheating is totally fine, going prostitution, my husband going prostitution, no, no, that doesn't count as cheating. Like, where they come from? So yeah, I'm really thinking about it. And yeah, I get asked a lot that. And so do you say cheating happens in Japan or not. Um, and I think, yeah, cheating happens in Japan for sure. And then I feel that it's quite a lot. I can even say that. I admit that cheating happens a lot in Japan. But I'm kind of bothered by those narratives and what people nowadays say about Japanese people is Japanese people cheat more than Westerners or people in other countries, right? But I'm like, how can you tell by those street interviews? Because people on the street, openly say that, hey, I'm cheating my boyfriend. Uh, saying those things are not doesn't really reflect the entire population of Japan for sure. They are picking up those, type of men and women. So I think it's kind of biased, and people start to believe that, oh, Japanese people, cheat more than people in our country. And I don't the I disagree with that because there's no reliable statistics that shows Japanese people cheat more, right? I mean, like, how can you tell that? Because it's the subject is very private already, and then even though you do statistics, it's kind of hard to believe that. So I think the real answer to that is we don't know. we can't. We can never know which countries people cheat more. So yeah, there's that. Um, yeah, and then people even say that it's acceptable, right? Like, you can. Yeah, you mentioned the prostitution, but you know, going to cheating is acceptable in Japan. I also disagree with that because, like we've discussed, Japanese people aren't very upfront and very direct. So even if you cheat on your wife or husband or whatever, they don't really say oh, that's so disgusting. You should definitely stop doing that at your face. People be like, oh, okay, you seem to enjoy. Oh, that's fine. But people don't really, uh, deny you in front of you, but they'll probably get disgusted in their guts. So you can't really say, just because people didn't really uh, say that to you, that doesn't mean people are accepting you cheating on your partner. Um, yeah, I mean there are so many reasons, but yeah,
Yeah, that was honestly, those videos were so surprising to me. I would never peg
yeah.
Japan as one of the places where cheating is acceptable, and it just doesn't come up. I don't want to specify which countries I would assume would be more open to it, but it would be a
Mhm.
lot more like typically like more sexualized like countries. But Japan, yeah, those interviews really surprised me. So it was interesting for me to hear that you didn't fully agree with that, and I think maybe you're onto something that like when they ask people, communication plays such a big role as well, that um I think Japanese people, they just wouldn't be very upfront with their feelings in the first
Mm.
place. So maybe that was part of it. Yeah, I have no idea. I think straight interviews are really as much as like I make so many of those videos, I struggle as well because it just depends on who you're going to meet. And as you mentioned in your video, it depends on which area you're going to go to. Like they were in a
Right.
specific area asking that question. If you go
Mm.
somewhere else, like I did a video in Rio and we asked people on the beach, but does that like show the whole of Rio? No, those are the people that didn't have work and they went to the beach. If you would go to the business center, you would get other types of people. And of
Right.
course, yeah, of course that content gets clicks like that. I remember those
Mm.
videos, they went viral with everybody talking about them. um, and again, with the prostitution culture, I had
Mm.
no idea. Like, I don't even have any comments on this because I've heard a lot of things about Japan. I've been obsessed with Japanese culture, but the cheating has never come up. So I'm very
Mhm.
surprised to see those videos.
Prostitution, yeah. It's prostitution is probably socially kind of accepted in Japan, even though it's still illegal. They kind of let things slide when it comes to prostitution. So there are so many uh, places like that in Japan. And I think this is like historically speaking, we are going back to like Edo period, which is like, I don't know, 200, 150 years ago. Uh, Japan started to ban human trafficking because of the influence from the West, but they still didn't prohibit prostitution because this comes from discrimination towards women. And prostitution is mainly for women's job, right? So they didn't really care about it, so they didn't ban prostitution. And and it still goes on. uh Prostitution is kind of illegal but kind of not, and people still go there often. I mean, I'm not saying many people are going there, but certain type of people going there so many times, right? So there's this factor, I guess. And traditionally speaking, in an older generation, um, I guess husbands going to prostitution is was used to be a bit more common, but you know, wives just had to accept it because you know uh, they were all housewives and they were not so independent financially, so they just had to allow husbands to go prostitution. And then yeah, that was the thing, I think. I that yeah, that was pretty common in Japan. But nowadays, as women are more independent. Now, women, younger generation are more independent. It's not that common, and I've seen a few women who just ended their relationships because they found out that their partners were going to prostitute, and that they considered cheating. Um, so yeah, and then even though we see a few women saying that, oh, I can just let it slide, even if my boyfriend going to prostitutes, I don't really mind. They might say that because that makes you look more generous, like a generous woman, and that's kind of like socially expected to say as a woman. They might say it because it's in front of the camera to be to meet the social expectation and make them look more generous women. But I think if their partners who they really love are going to prostitution, they definitely get heartbroken, right? How can they be like, oh, that's a paid relationship, so I don't mind? I don't think that's the thing in their guts. It's actually another tatemae, it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I think it
So,
makes a lot of
mhm,
sense when you talk about the past and how like women had to overlook certain things because the man called the shots. So they just had to accept their fate that men would want sex somewhere else.
mhm,
But I think nowadays it is quite strange that, especially with like women, gaining more power and and becoming more like in control of their destiny, like just be, coming into their own, that they would be okay with that. And maybe
mhm,
you're right. Maybe there's like general, like historically there's less of a taboo with being a prostitute, but I don't think it's that easy to just separate like, oh, this is just for sex, if you're in a relationship with someone.
mm,
So I don't know, actually, like, to anyone that's watching or listening to this podcast, what are your thoughts on this? We actually would love to to hear them as well, or to read them,
mm,
because that's a topic that needs a lot of exploring, and it can't just be done through street interview style videos, right? Like, someone really needs to look into this.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that what you said makes a lot of sense as well, with just being positive and not trying to disrupt like the harmony and just the
Mm.
The tatemae.
Tatemae, yes.
um, do you work with clients, right? Do you work with some clients that you dating advice and dating
Yes,
coaching?
yes. Hmm.
What is like the top issue that people come to you with typically?
I think a lot of people kind of struggle to with the cultural gaps and the rules because we Japanese people tend to work with rules, right? So there are some rules in dating too, like we do like a confession commitment talk within like 3 to 5 dates, so you should really navigate towards it, but you know Western people tend not to have that kind of ideas, right? They start like casually and get to know each other, and then at some point they become couple in somehow. It depends on the couple, but Japan, it's kind of like a one rule to be a couple. So, yeah, people tend to get this idea, like making commitments within such early stage of the dating. But yeah, I explain how it goes, and yeah, some people actually uh, understand that and do kokuhaku confession to their dates and then get success, because um, it's I think those clients who can make that kind of like cultural adjustment, or make some compromises, even though it's really different from their culture, they tend to make more success. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that. And
Mm,
yeah, I definitely like I think it's definitely helpful like understanding someone else's culture before you go there and not expecting that it's going to be just like your country.
yeah.
Because and this is why I love doing what I'm doing because like trying to understand another culture is always really interesting to me,
Mm,
especially Japanese culture. And I know there's differences within Japan as well that we're not even getting into, but like for the most part still it's a very unique culture. And there's a reason there's so many people are obsessed with it. Like what's interesting to me is that let's say if you'll make a Brazilian video, you'll get majority of the people that will watch it are Brazilians.
mm,
But if you make a Japanese video, majority that will watch it are Americans or Canadians or British people. Like, so it's most of the world. It's not Japanese people watching their own content. It's like the world trying to understand more. So any
mm.
creators that focus on Japan, I think they're really in luck because they have like a gold mine right in front of them because there's really like no matter what you make about Japan, people are like, whoa, he's half British and half Japanese. Whoa, he's half black and half Japanese. Like, let me watch the hell out of this video. So I've noticed this trend. I pick up on trends. I'm like, there's definitely something there, you know?
Oh, isn't that more of a Korean thing nowadays?
I think so. I think Korea is
Yeah,
definitely like one of them. I follow one of the
yeah.
creators. She's a Belarusian married to a Korean guy, and people just love it. Like they eat it up. But there's a lot of like Eastern European girls now moving to Korea, dating Korean men.
Oh,
They're like a metrosexual dream.
oh yeah. Korean oppa. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, for sure. Like it really is it's that's the new trend. It used to be Japan. I think Korea is the new trend.
Yes, I feel like that.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
Asagi, thank you so so much for taking part in the video. For
Thank you
anyone
so
that's
much.
yeah, thank you. And for anyone that's watching, just to let you guys know, we're like at a crazy time difference here. I'm sure you guys know. But it's 11:27 here. And what
Oh,
time is it in Japan?
it's 12:30 in
12.
Japan.
Is it
Noon. Yeah.
noon? Okay. So yeah, thank you so much. And guys, if you want to check out Asagi, I'm gonna link all her channels below so you can listen to her. She makes a lot of really wonderful content, like very genuine, honest, and very direct content for Japanese that talks about all these trends and if you want to know anything about dating in Japan, she's the person to go and check out. So thanks again,
Yeah.
Asagi.
Thank you. Happy to chat with you here.
Okay, have a great rest of your day, and I think I'm gonna go to bed.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye
Yeah.
bye. Bye.
Hi. Bye.